Good day. My name is Lisa, and I will be your conference operator. At this time, I would like to welcome everyone to the Beyond Rights Party webinar. All lines have been placed on mute to prevent any background noise. If you should need assistance during the call, please press star and 0, and an operator will assist you. I would now like to turn today's call over to your host, Mr. Tom Miller, VP of Analytic Solutions. Please go ahead.
Hi, and good afternoon. My name is Tom Miller, and I am formerly the CEO of ALI Solutions and currently the VP of Analytics here at Noble Systems, as Noble Systems acquired ALI back in September. Today's webinar, titled Beyond Right Party Contacts, focuses on call targeting strategies and how innovative analytic solutions and best practices can help your organization achieve its business objectives. And as we just mentioned, a quick administrative note before I jump into the presentation. We've muted all the lines on this call, so please hold your questions until the end or submit online, and then I'll try to leave some time at the end to respond to those questions. So as we often hear from our customers, the most common issue everyone faces today is that people just won't answer the phone like they did 10 or even 5 years ago. And as a result, every contact center manager is working hard to find new ways to get better contact rates, really to improve the number of right party contact rates. And with the challenge of getting customers or prospects on the phone, not to mention the constant expense and budget constraints, you have to find ways to maximize the productivity of your very important and very expensive agent resources. And you really need to find ways to make every contact count. But at the end of the day, and unfortunately, that's just not good enough. Getting right party contacts alone is not good enough, because you have to achieve your business objectives and goals, which means you need to do more than simply generate more right party contacts. You need to go beyond right party contacts and make sure you're connecting with the right people, the valuable contacts, really the high priority contacts. So in addition to establishing contact with your customers or your prospects, you also need to make sure you're prioritizing the contacts that are most valuable to your business. This presentation is focused on how to do just that. So we'll go beyond right party contacts with your calling strategy and share a path on how you can prioritize the right contacts in your calling campaigns. And what are some of these important business value drivers that are important to your call targeting strategies? Typically, we're referring to the metrics that drive revenue or cost within your company, or more specifically, the metrics that drive the success of your specific contact center operations. And I think in many cases that compensation is associated with achieving those certain objectives. And that'll vary based on the business function. So if you're in collections, it's all about dollars collected. And you're likely to place your calling priority on getting to customers that have higher balances or owe you more money, or focus on customers that are more likely to repay you, or are only more likely to repay if you actually reach out and contact them, or even focusing on customers that are in the later stages of delinquency or with whom you're losing contact. And if you're selling product and telemarketing, it's important to understand who is more or less likely to buy the product or service, as well as which specific product or service that a prospect is more likely to purchase, or even how much revenue they may generate over time. And it's also important in a lot of cases to understand the credit qualifications for loan or lease approval that may be associated with those product sales. And then finally, if you're servicing customers, if you're providing an outbound customer service, it's important to know which customers are at risk and which customers are a high priority to invest in and save based on your relationship and potentially based on their profitability to your organization. So the information you can use to help prioritize your calling campaigns can come from a whole variety of sources, both internally available information, such as that which can be obtained from your billing system or your customer service system, as well as publicly available third-party data. You know, and I think one of the biggest opportunities we probably see when we walk into a new customer operation is a lack of external information in the contact center operation. And while the marketing and the risk management functions often take full advantage of information sources like credit bureau data, demographic, and other third-party data, unfortunately, that information doesn't seem to make its way into the contact center to be leveraged at the exact point of direct customer interaction. But it is available, and it can be very effective at segmenting, filtering, and prioritizing customer calling campaigns. And in addition to all these many data sources and data elements, you can also take advantage of predictive analytic models to help synthesize hundreds of individual data elements into a single score or probability estimate. So I know some of you will be familiar with leveraging different types of predictive models, but if you're not familiar, there are many different types of models that can help you better understand and estimate specific consumer behavior. So they range from predicting the likelihood that someone will answer the phone, to whether they will respond to a product offer, or estimating the amount of revenue they will generate in a specific period of time, or even who will make a payment and self-cure without you needing to spend resources to collect. And in all of these modeling applications, several hundred individual data elements about an individual may wind up providing the ability to accurately predict a known and defined outcome, such as answering the phone, making a payment, or buying a product. What's great about using one or more predictive models is it enables you to effectively make information-based decisions by using a single score or model output, rather than having to create complicated rules that may require dozens or more data elements. And again, one or more of these predictive models can be used to help you prioritize your calling campaigns. So you can determine the types of customers that are the highest priority to contact and even know which specific data elements or values are needed to help you segment and prioritize those calling campaigns. But you often run into a problem when those priorities or values just don't align. I think the most common conflict occurs in collections, where everyone wants to get right party contacts on the phone, but they also typically want to connect with a high-risk account that may roll to a later stage of delinquency, or to talk to a customer with a higher balance. And easy-to-contact customers are usually customers where you have the best relationship, the greatest presence of phone numbers, and they're not going to be your high-risk, high-balance customers. I think a similar situation exists in the telemarketing world, where those prospects most likely to buy your product or service will often not be the best credit applicants. Many times the best credit applicants are those that are less responsive or even sit on the do not call list. Therefore, it's important to find a way to manage these conflicting priorities. Probably the most common method for dealing with conflicting priorities is to manage priorities at a group level. Characteristics of each account or prospect can be used to place the record into a group, which can then be included in a unique campaign. A matrix approach, like the one on this chart, helps determine a strategy for dealing with conflicting objectives. In this simple matrix, the values are defined as balance and risk, with higher balances or higher risk representing the priority for the business. Those accounts that are grouped as both high risk and high balance are segmented into a unique calling campaign that would receive the top priority. Accounts that have both a low balance and low risk estimate are grouped into a unique campaign that would receive the lowest priority. And the two groups in the middle can be collapsed into a single calling campaign and receive a middle level priority. And I'm sure that many of you work with matrix-based strategies every day. You can use rules to apply a matrix decisioning strategy. It can be a very effective way to deal with conflicting priorities, but it's not ideal, because within each one of those groups, you have a wide range of individual values, meaning some of the accounts in the high balance group are really close to the low balance group. For example, if the bottom value of the high balance group here is $500, you will have some accounts that have a balance of $501 and maybe more similar to most of the accounts in the low balance group than the bulk of the accounts in the high balance group. But because you're making decisions at the group level, they just get grouped into that high balance campaign. What is ideal is to manage these conflicting priorities at the account level and not the group level. By managing at the account level, you're essentially creating a matrix of one and evaluating the specific conflicting value for every account. At the account level, you have the ability to combine multiple and conflicting values to produce what we call an objective function value, a single value that can be used to set the priority for calling the account record. While this is an ideal approach in building your calling campaigns, you cannot easily make decisions on thousands or millions of individuals with a simple rules approach. To effectively handle large volumes, you need to leverage some form of optimization or a sophisticated account level sorting process where you can make individual decisions on millions of records in a matter of minutes. In this example, we look at combining the balance of the account with the likelihood of getting a right party contact. Generally speaking, you can note that the smaller balance account has a higher likelihood of contact, while the high balance account has generally a low contact percentage. This example also highlights a common case where some accounts are specifically reachable at very specific times of the day, while a smaller number may have roughly the same chance of contact in every single period. And then really the final note in this example is to point out the difference in strategies between sorting and optimizing. If you took the approach to sort in each time period and you only had resources to make a single call within each time period, so you had that staffing constraint, you would select account number 3 to call in the morning because it has the highest value. combined value, right? So that's 10% contactability times the $300 balance gives it the highest combined value. That would leave accounts 1 and 2 to call in the afternoon and the evening. Now, if you were to optimize this schedule, and by optimizing, you'd be looking at all the available options, all the available combinations of value, and selecting the best overall combination, you would make a different choice, and you'd select account number 2 in the morning, therefore leaving accounts 1 and 3, which have greater contact rates for the afternoon and the evening. So now let's look at a simulation analysis that we have performed to show the impact of using different objective functions to prioritize calling campaigns. In this simulation, we tested the impact that different objective functions or priority values have on some key business values or metrics, including right party contact rates, promise to pay rates, and the balances of the accounts contacted. For the simulation, we used actual client data from a collection client, but keep in mind that the same type of simulation can be run for sales or service-based examples. So here we have the results of that simulation as summarized in this table. In the far left column, we show the 4 different objective functions that we use to prioritize the campaign schedule. The first solely focused on getting the maximum or most number of right party contacts. The second focused on getting the maximum number of promises. The third, the highest balances. And the fourth incorporated an element of risk, payment risk, credit risk, by looking at the greatest combination of balance times risk, which is often referred to as a dollars at risk variable. And then the columns from left to right show a common set of business metrics that we use to evaluate each simulated strategy. So first you can see by the green shaded cells that run down the center, the success metric is highest for each strategy that's focused on maximizing that particular metric. So for example, the strategy focused on maximizing right party contacts produced a higher rate of right party contact per agent hour, 7.2, than any other strategy. Similarly, when focused on maximizing balances, that strategy produced the greatest balance per right party contact at 4,966. I think these simulations also show the trade-offs that happen between these competing or conflicting objectives that we just talked about. It shows that a strategy focused on getting the maximum number of right party contacts is actually going to produce the lowest balance per RPC at $3,676. And a strategy that's focused on dollars at risk, which is the bottom row, is going to produce the fewest right party contacts per agent hour, which is 6.3. And I think you can also see the alignment between priorities. So you have similarities, for example, between maximizing right party contacts and maximizing promises, and many of the result metrics show that. And you also have the similarities between maximizing balances and maximizing dollars at risk. Again, similar values in each of those cells. And so this same simulation approach can be used to test any number and any combination of potential call targeting strategies, and can be a very effective tool in helping you understand the impact that these different strategies may have, before you place them into production. So in conclusion, I wanted to share what I believe are the best practices from this simulation and what we see working across dozens of clients in a whole variety of industries and functions. So the first is focusing solely on right party contacts is probably not the best business strategy. We have a lot of clients that will use our technology to initially start with strategies to maximize right party contacts because it's a good way to get comfortable with right party contact analytics. But then based on the business function, it's fairly common to move into other business-oriented strategies. So point number 2 here, for collections, it's very common to take that right party contact estimate and also incorporate some form of balance and or a risk component, payment risk, into the call targeting strategy. So again, it could be focused on right party contact times balance or the dollars at risk component that I mentioned earlier. I think the next thing is it's often important to customize these call targeting strategies based on the population segment. So this could be different products if you're in a sales environment or even a service environment. It could be different buckets of delinquency or different types of accounts that reside within your account population. And each one of those could have a different target, a different call targeting strategy applied. The fourth point is to use champion challenger testing to arrive at the most effective strategy. Now, I mentioned earlier that simulation analysis is a great way to figure out the impact on business metrics of trying different strategies. And another way of doing that, but in a production mode, is to take random groups and divide them into champion and challenger testing strategies and to run those groups in production over an adequate period of time so that you can determine which strategy is more effective. Is it focused on maximizing promises or is it focused on the highest balance of the account? And so you're able to run those strategies and report on them and look at those results in order to arrive at the most effective strategy. And then in the spirit of continuous improvement, constantly run new challenger strategies to figure out ways to hone and improve what you have in place. The next one may seem really simple, but I think it's, again, an area where, we see lots of opportunities when we walk into customer accounts for the first time. And that's making sure that you're aligning the value you're using to prioritize your calling campaign with the same measure for success. And if you think back on the table that showed the metrics by different strategy, again, if you're setting up a strategy that's designed to increase right party contacts, but you're measuring it based on the balances or dollars associated with each right party contact, you've got a mismatch there, and it's going to be difficult to really figure out what's working well for you. So again, it's important to align those. And then finally, just keep it simple. I think that that's really important, regardless of the size of your organization, the level of sophistication and resource you may have. At the end of the day, it's important that you can explain your strategies throughout your business to people outside the contact center, up through management, et cetera, that it's very clear on what the business priorities are and how your campaign targeting strategies and how your prioritization aligns to those business goals and objectives. So with that, I am now going to move into the questions. And what I'm going to do first is I've got, I think maybe before we open it up to questions on the call, I've actually received a few questions in advance, so let me make sure that I cover those for you. So the first question is, besides best time to call, is there a functionality for best period/days to call? So absolutely. The same models that would be used to predict rate and wrong party contact can be segmented by day to adjust estimates for each day of the week, or in a lot of cases, grouping a few days together or common days together. So, for instance, Saturdays and Sundays may be very different from a contact perspective. They can be different than weekdays, but you may have certain days of the week that look exactly the same. So there's opportunities to segment right party or wrong party contact models and do so based on the day in which the contacts are occurring. And when you have models that are segmented by day, you also have the ability to bring all of your records or as many records as you can process into a single day's input file, collection download file as an example. And then the schedule can take into account each day and each hour's specific estimates. So I guess the short answer is yes, there's the ability to incorporate best days to call can be done by segmenting contactability models. The next question is, can you forecast actions once a right party contact has been made? Again, and I think I covered it briefly in the content earlier, but you do have the ability to leverage models to predict the outcome once a right party is achieved. So it depends on what the business function is. For telemarketing or sales, you can predict response once a contact has occurred. You can predict response that's customized to a product or response to different products for an individual. In collections, it would represent predicting the likelihood that a promise of payment will be made once a right party contact is achieved. If it's outbound customer service, you can predict the likelihood that the account will cancel. As I mentioned in the earlier example, you can even predict an estimated amount of revenue that can be generated over a certain period of time. So all those would be actions that occur after the contact is established. Next question is, how are changing regulations affecting best practices? Are there best practices that help improve results when regulations work against performance? So just generally, when I first read this question, I think it can be a topic by itself. So maybe that's a future webinar option, because I think there's a lot to talk about. But, one consistent best practice is to look for opportunities to establish contact with fewer calls. And the more targeting and the more effective you are in that targeting, in being able to reach your customer more quickly, the less regulatory and reputational risk you will face. So without targeting, you're simply calling over and over and over again to get that contact, which means more dials, more attempts, more chances for some compliance issue to arise. So I think taking advantage of information and effective call targeting strategies at the highest level is definitely a way to stay compliant and maximize performance. Next strategy, or next question rather, what are some strategies for prioritizing or not prioritizing customers where there have been multiple contacts? So I think one of the benefits of using right party contact models in building your calling schedules and prioritizing your calling campaigns is over time, customers who you are not making contact with over multiple attempts are naturally going to fall low on the priority list. And they're naturally going to move themselves down from a scheduling priority perspective. And you also have the ability to create custom rules to further filter or reallocate low contact individuals. So, for example, if you have a certain number of attempts, 3, 4 attempts without success in a short period of time, you've got the ability to tag that record and then to redirect it to a different contact channel, which may offer better success since you're not having much of any success calling them. So offering some other, redirecting them to a different contact channel such as text, mail, email, etc. Okay, so those were all the questions that have been submitted. I'll open at this point to see if anybody has a question on the call.
At this time, if you'd like to ask a question, simply press star and the number 1 on your telephone keypad. We'll pause briefly to compile the Q&A roster. And there are no questions at this time.
All right, super. So I appreciate everybody's time today. And what I've listed on the screen here are info@noblesystems.com is an email address that you can follow up any questions you may think of after today's presentation. More than happy to go into detail on some of the topics that we covered in the webinar today and to answer any outstanding questions that you may have. And otherwise, thanks everybody for their time today, and that'll conclude today's presentation.
Thank you, and that concludes today's conference. You may now disconnect. Presenters, please hold.